Hello, my name is Soraya Dre. I'm a federal judge, but that didn't stop two uniformed officers from pinning me down while my own sister shaved my head in front of our entire family. People clapped. My mother laughed. She said, "Look at her bald head. It's hilarious." 5 minutes later, I walked into that same building wearing my robe and called their case to order. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the years before that day, the small, quiet cuts, being erased from photos, watching my mother give credit for my gifts to someone else, sitting at a dinner table where my presence was tolerated but never truly welcomed. They said I was too serious, too distant, too cold. But maybe that's what happens when the people you love most train you to expect cruelty with a smile. So I ask you, what would you do if the very people who raised you turned your life into a joke? When I walked into the courthouse that afternoon, the air felt strangely heavy, like the building itself knew something I didn't. Late spring in Charlotte usually carried a soft warmth, the kind that floated in through the windows and settled on your shoulders. But inside that marble hallway, I felt the chill of something else, anticipation mixed with deceit. They told me it was a ceremony to honor my father. A man like him deserved that. Judge Raymond Dre. He'd been the face of justice in our town for 3 decades. When he passed, even the courthouse flags had dipped half-mast. So when my sister Valora called about the family organizing a special tribute, I said yes before she even finished the sentence. The elevator doors opened to the sound of laughter and clapping. Cameras flashed. My mother stood near the front, her pearl earrings gleaming beneath the fluorescent lights. She smiled too wide. My sister, dressed in her perfect cream blazer, turned toward me, arms open like she'd just seen an old friend. "There she is," Valora said, her voice smooth as honey but cold at the edges. "Our guest of honor." Guest. The words stung a little. I was my father's daughter. Why did I feel like a visitor? I walked forward, nodding at the familiar faces. Some of my father's colleagues were there, a few retired judges, neighbors, even old family friends. Everyone seemed in on something I wasn't. The air was charged, not with grief, not with nostalgia, but with amusement. I adjusted my blazer and tried to steady my breath. "You didn't tell me this was such a big crowd." Valora laughed. "Oh, you know Mom. She can't do anything small." Mom winked. "It's a celebration, baby. You look lovely, though I wish you'd do something with that hair. It hides your face." I brushed off the comment, the way I always did. "This is how I like it, Mom." Before I could find a seat, Valora clapped her hands together. "All right, everyone, time for our little family tradition. In honor of Dad's sense of humor, we're holding a light-hearted mock trial. You know, like those he used to do for us when we were kids." There were chuckles around the room. Someone even whistled. I tried to smile, but my chest tightened. My father's mock trials were lessons in fairness, never cruelty. Valora motioned toward me. "And today's lucky defendant? My dear sister Soraya." A few people applauded. My mother laughed, clapping along. "Oh, this is going to be good." I forced a polite grin. "Wait, what's the charge?" "Being too serious," Valora teased. "Always judging, never laughing. Come on, sit here. It's all in good fun." She gestured toward a wooden chair in the center of the room. My father used to sit there when he told us bedtime stories about justice and kindness. I hesitated. Then the doors opened behind me. 2 uniformed officers walked in, Trent Vask and Mason Greer. My stomach dropped. Trent's smirk was unmistakable, the same one he'd worn in law school the day I caught him cheating on an ethics exam. I hadn't seen him since the board expelled him. "Charlotte PD's finest," Valora announced. "They've agreed to help us with the theatrics." The crowd laughed again. Trent gave me a mock salute. "Good to see you again, Judge Dre." I froze. "What is this?" "Relax," Valora said, tilting her head. "It's just tradition, like Dad used to do." Trent's hands were suddenly on my arms, guiding me, no, gripping me, toward the chair. Mason chuckled, pulling out a set of shiny silver handcuffs. "Prop cuffs," he said, but they clicked shut around my wrists. The laughter grew louder. "Valora, this isn't funny," I said, trying to stand. "Oh, don't ruin it," she purred, waving at the camera crew. You always take things too seriously. Something in me tightened. The edges of the room blurred, and my voice dropped low. Let go of me. But they didn't. Valora stepped closer, reaching into her designer bag. And now, she said, pulling out a small buzzing trimmer, our defendant will pay for her crimes. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Some thought it was still part of the joke. Others shifted uncomfortably. Valora, stop. My voice was calm, steady, judicial even. Come on, sis, she cooed, flicking the switch. It's just a haircut. Dad loved a good symbol, remember? Mason raised his phone, recording. Smile for the camera. The first strand fell to the floor like a quiet scream. The sound of the trimmer filled the room, a sharp mechanical hum slicing through laughter. Trent tightened his grip. My scalp burned as Valora dragged the razor across my head again. Stop it, someone whispered in the crowd. But no one moved. The smell of metal and hairspray filled the air. My mother's laugh cut through the noise. Look at her bald head. It's hilarious. The applause started again. Hesitant at first, then louder, like they were convincing themselves it was still a game. I stopped struggling. My breath slowed. I stared straight ahead, into the reflection of the courthouse's glass wall. My father's portrait hung there, watching. For a moment, I saw myself beside him, both dignified and defeated. Then, only him. Valora wiped the sweat from her brow, triumphant. There. Doesn't she look lighter already? Someone joked. Guess she finally learned to loosen up. Their laughter blurred into white noise. I no longer felt the chair under me or the cuffs on my wrists. I felt weightless, like falling inside my own mind. Time distorted. The world moved in slow motion. The buzzing stopped, the applause echoed, and I counted my heartbeat instead of seconds. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. The humiliation should have broken me, but something else bloomed beneath the surface. A strange calm. I looked at each face in the crowd, some pretending not to see me, others too entertained to look away. Every pair of eyes told me the same thing. They believed I would stay quiet. Valora touched my shoulder. No hard feelings, right? You'll laugh about this later. I looked up at her, my face expressionless. 5 minutes, I whispered. She blinked. What? I repeated, slower this time. 5 minutes. Trent smirked. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled faintly. You'll see. I stood, the handcuffs clinking as Mason fumbled with the key. The crowd began dispersing, relieved the performance was over. I brushed a handful of hair from my lap, each strand sticking to my skin like ash. My scalp stung under the fluorescent light. Valora laughed again, but her voice trembled. You know, sis, you really do look better this way. I met her gaze one last time. 5 minutes from now, I said softly, none of you will laugh again. I turned toward the hallway, my reflection following me in every polished surface, shaven, stripped, yet strangely unbroken. 5 minutes. That's all I needed. 5 minutes from now, none of them will laugh again. That sentence kept pulsing in my head, steady as a heartbeat. But before those 5 minutes arrived, I remembered another night, 2 weeks earlier, when the first cut wasn't to my hair, but to my place in the family. It was my mother's 72nd birthday. Valora insisted we celebrate at her house, the same one she bragged about designing in Dad's honor. Every piece of furniture was imported, every painting a conversation starter. It smelled like polished wood and expensive wine. I arrived with a small box wrapped in pale gold paper. Inside was a necklace of freshwater pearls, hand-strung by a local artisan I'd met during a charity case last year. The card, in my own handwriting, read, "For the woman who taught me fairness." When I walked in, Valora was already laughing too loudly at something our cousin said. She greeted me with that polished smile she always wore when other people were watching. "Soria, you made it! We were beginning to think work had you chained again." "Traffic," I said simply, setting my purse on the side table. Mom turned from the kitchen island, wine glass in hand. "Well, you're here now. Take off that jacket, baby. You look so formal." Valora draped an arm around me. "You know her, Mom, always the judge, even at dinner." Laughter. Always at my expense, always harmless, until it wasn't. I smiled the way I'd learned to, polite, neutral, unreadable. Then I handed Mom the small gold box. "Happy birthday, Mom. I hope you like it." She gasped when she opened it. "Oh my goodness, this is beautiful." Before I could say anything, Valora leaned forward, her voice sliding in smoothly. "You picked perfectly, sis. Thank you for letting me give it on your behalf." The room froze for a beat, then filled with chatter again. Mom hugged Valora and said, "You always know my style." "Thank you, sweetheart." My throat tightened. I waited for someone to correct her, for Mom to realize the card, for Valora to admit the truth. But no one did. It was like I'd never walked in with the box. I sat quietly, my hands folded in my lap. Under the tablecloth, I pressed my nails into my palm until I felt the sting. Cousin Harold lifted his glass. "To Isolde, the queen of the family!" Everyone cheered. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The night dragged on through small talk and refilled wine glasses. Valora moved around like a hostess on television, making sure everyone's glass was full and their attention on her. Every now and then she brushed past me, whispering little jabs disguised as jokes. "You should smile more, Soraya. You look like you're cross-examining the lasagna." By dessert, I was tired of pretending. I stood to help clear the plates, just to get away from the noise. As I passed behind Mom, I caught her reflection in the window. She was leaning toward Aunt Meredith, whispering loudly enough for the table to hear. "With hair like that," Mom said, swirling her wine, "no wonder she can't keep a man." The table erupted in polite laughter, the kind people make when they want to appear entertained, but not cruel. Valora's laugh came a second too late, too forced. My body froze mid-step. The plates in my hands trembled. For a moment, all I could hear was the clinking of cutlery and the blood rushing in my ears. I set the dishes down gently, turned toward the reflection. My own face stared back at me, sharp, controlled, expressionless. Behind it, a room full of people pretending I wasn't standing there. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck. Years of being the quiet daughter, the rational one, trained me to swallow anger before it showed. Aunt Meredith caught my eye and gave a weak smile. "She doesn't mean it, honey. You know how mothers can be." I nodded, my jaw tight. "Yes. I know exactly how they can be." I went to the sink, turned on the faucet, and scrubbed the same plate until my fingers wrinkled. The sound of running water drowned out the laughter behind me. When the last guest left, I stayed behind to help clean. Mom kissed Valora on the cheek. "You always make things perfect." Then she turned to me. "Thank you for helping with the dishes, sweetheart." I looked at her. For once, she seemed small, fragile even, but the bitterness in her smile stayed. "Of course," I said. "That's what I do best." She blinked, maybe unsure what I meant, but I didn't explain. Valora came back into the kitchen, heels clicking. "Don't forget tomorrow's planning call for Dad's ceremony," she said. "Try not to be late. We all know punctuality isn't your strongest suit." "I'll be there," I replied, my tone even. "I wouldn't want to ruin your show." Her brow furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, drying my hands. "Just looking forward to the tribute." On the drive home, the night stretched out in a long ribbon of silence. The streetlights washed the city in pale gold. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked tired, older somehow. I replayed the dinner again and again, Mom's laughter, Valora's lie, the way no one corrected it. I thought about the necklace lying against my mother's chest, shining under the dining room light, a token of affection she believed came from someone else. By the time I reached my condo, my pulse had steadied, but something inside me felt different, like a thread had snapped quietly. I parked, sat in the car for a moment, and stared at my hands. They weren't trembling anymore. I thought about how Dad used to say, "The law starts at home. If you let unfairness slide under your own roof, you'll never see justice anywhere else." That night, his words stopped being theory. They became instruction. I went upstairs, hung my blazer, and poured a glass of water. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I caught my reflection again. Same hair Mom hated, same face she never really looked at. I touched my curls and whispered, "They'll see me one day, even if they have to lose everything first." The next morning, Valora's email popped up before sunrise. "Don't forget, dress casually for the event. We'll have some fun with it." Dad would have wanted laughter. I stared at the screen for a long moment, the cursor blinking at the end of her message. Then I clicked reply and typed 2 words. 5 minutes. I didn't send it. I deleted the draft, closed my laptop, and watched the sun crawl across my window. They think I'll stay silent forever. They think my place at the table is wherever they leave an empty chair. But that night, something shifted, and I stopped asking for a seat at their table. The following week, Valora texted me. It was a brief message, polished, vague, exactly like her. "Swing by Wednesday if you're free. Want your thoughts on the ceremony flow, 5 p.m.? That was her way of extending an olive branch without admitting she ever snapped it off in the first place. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before typing back, "See you then." It wasn't optimism that made me agree. It was something closer to curiosity. I needed to understand what game she was playing, and if there was any part of our history she hadn't polished to a lie. A small part of me, still fragile and foolish, wanted to believe she was capable of sincerity. That Wednesday, I arrived 5 minutes early. I had a manila folder in one hand with notes, legal outlines, and a proposed speaker list. It felt like bringing a compass into a storm I already knew wouldn't be charted. The front door was unlocked. That wasn't surprising. Valora believed in image over security. Her foyer still smelled faintly of vanilla and glass cleaner. The marble tile reflected the late afternoon light pouring through her towering windows. Oh, she wasn't downstairs yet. "Make yourself at home," her voice echoed from upstairs. I wandered into the living room, folders still in hand. The place was pristine, like a showroom pretending to be a home. Everything in its place, everything curated. Her throw pillows matched the drapes. The coffee table was cleared except for an untouched copy of Architectural Digest and a single lit candle. But it was the mantel above the fireplace that drew my eyes. Dozens of family photos lined it. Our childhood birthdays, vacations, weddings I'd attended in quiet obligation. Then I saw it. The photo from Dad's funeral. It had been taken right after the ceremony. I remembered that day vividly, the way the wind pulled at our dresses, the silence between us all, the moment when Mom finally cried after holding it in for hours. We'd stood together for a group photo at the cemetery gates. Me on the far left, Valora next to me, her husband, then Mom, aunts, uncles. I stepped closer. The frame held a cropped version of that photo. Valora, her husband, Mom, the rest of them, clearly visible. My side of the image had been cut away, except, just barely, you could see the edge of a sleeve, the soft curve of an elbow. Mine. They hadn't replaced the picture. They'd trimmed me out. My body stiffened. I took another step forward, blinking to be sure. No mistake. It wasn't a print error. It wasn't accidental. It was precise. Surgical. "Soraya," I turned. Valora appeared at the top of the staircase, barefoot, in workout leggings and a cashmere tunic, carrying a glass of something lemony. "I'm almost done up here. Give me 2, she said, already turning away. I managed a nod and turned back to the fireplace. The glass over the frame reflected my own face now, overlaying the image from which I'd been erased. That picture had always been awkward, a little too staged, but I'd kept a copy in a drawer at home. The full version. The real one. I stood there until Valora returned. She breezed into the room with a tablet in hand. "Sorry, Zoom call with the sponsor dragged. I swear these people want me to plan the whole thing and pay for it too." I didn't answer. I just pointed toward the mantel. "Did something happen to this frame?" She glanced, then gave a small shrug. "Oh, yeah. The original print got water damage. I had to reprint what we had. That one was the only copy I could salvage." She sipped her drink, barely looking. I studied her face. Nothing flinched. Not her brow, not her mouth. The lie sat comfortably on her tongue, like she'd told it a dozen times before. "Right," I said quietly. We sat. She opened her tablet, talked about catering, speaker order, music selection. I gave her polite responses. But in my chest, something cold was forming, slowly curling in like a fist. When I left, the sun was nearly down. The sky was pale orange, fading into a deeper blue. My car felt stuffy, the leather seats still warm from the sun. I sat for a moment before starting the engine. The silence was comforting. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there, my hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. They'd erased me, first from the birthday card, then from the gift, now from a photograph meant to honor our father, and no one flinched. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message, a clear, surgical decision to make me less. You don't exist to them, I whispered aloud. It wasn't bitter. It was factual, like reading a verdict aloud. I rolled down the window, letting the breeze in. My curls lifted slightly. I imagined them gone, like they would be 10 days from now, but I didn't shudder. I felt oddly calm. I drove through Charlotte without checking directions, letting muscle memory take over. I passed familiar landmarks, unfamiliar cars, strangers walking dogs I'd never see again. When I reached my condo, I didn't go in immediately. I stayed parked outside for a few minutes. Inside, my real life waited, case files, a half-read book, a sink of dishes. But I couldn't go in just yet. Not before I memorized what that photo looked like, that version of my family, the one where my elbow was all that remained, was going to haunt me. But it would also anchor me, remind me that my place was never given. It had always been something I had to claim on my own. I pulled out my phone and opened my camera roll, scrolled until I found the original picture, the full version. I zoomed in on my own face, not smiling, just standing, still, sober, real. That night, I printed it and pinned it on my fridge. 10 days later, they would wish they'd kept my elbow in the frame. 10 days later, they would wish they'd kept my elbow in the frame. But that morning, all I wanted was to get through a regular workday. I arrived at the courthouse a little before 8, coffee in hand, the smell of wet pavement following me inside. The spring rain had just stopped, leaving a damp shimmer on the steps. My clerk greeted me with a stack of folders, the kind of comfort only routine can bring. For a few hours, I was just Judge Soraya Dray again, steady, methodical, unflappable. I reviewed motions, signed off on scheduling orders, and answered 2 calls from the state prosecutor's office. By lunchtime, I almost believed my life outside these marble walls was under control. Then, I logged into the Foundation's online portal. The Dray Family Foundation had been my father's pride, his way of giving back after decades on the bench. After he passed, the board named me co-trustee with Valora, mostly to appease appearances. I'd been quietly running the scholarship arm, funding law students who couldn't afford tuition. That afternoon, I intended to upload next quarter's proposal. The login screen blinked red. Access denied. User account no longer authorized. I frowned, typed my password again, slower this time. The same message flashed back at me. I called the Foundation's IT line. A young man named Devin answered. His tone was polite, too careful. Judge Dray, it looks like your user account was permanently deleted 3 days ago. It says here, trustee update completed by V. Hatch. My throat went dry. Deleted? Yes, ma'am. Do you want me to open a ticket to restore access? No, I said after a beat. Don't bother. He hesitated. Are you sure? I'm sure. Thank you, Devin. When I hung up, the reflection on my office window stared back at me. A woman in a black robe who still believed fairness was possible inside a family that treated her like a footnote. I picked up my phone and texted Valora. Me. Just tried logging into the Foundation portal. Access revoked. Any idea why? Her reply came within a minute. Valora. We had to reset permissions. Must have been a system glitch. Don't worry, sis. It's on it. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. No apology, no explanation, not even the pretense of caring. That was her style. Smile, deflect, minimize. If manipulation were music, Valora played every note perfectly in tune. By 5 o'clock, I still hadn't cooled off. My chambers were empty, sunlight slanting across the polished wood. The courthouse always quieted this time of day. when the world outside moved on to dinner and laughter and lives less complicated than mine. I shut my laptop and grabbed my coat. Valora had scheduled a planning dinner for the upcoming memorial ceremony that evening. Against every sensible impulse, I'd promised I'd go. Driving across town, I rehearsed what I'd say if she brushed it off again. Maybe I'd call her out calmly. Maybe I'd let her expose herself in front of everyone. The thought almost comforted me. When I arrived, the driveway was already lined with cars. Through the tall windows, I could see movement, wine glasses clinking, silhouettes shifting. I parked and sat for a moment, watching the glow of the house, the way laughter leaked out like perfume. Inside, the air smelled of citrus candles and garlic bread. Everyone was gathered in the dining area, plates of appetizers half-eaten, drinks in hand. Valora was at the head of the table, as always. "There she is," she said when she saw me. "The busy judge joins us at last." Mom laughed from across the table. "We were about to issue a warrant, baby." I managed a smile, set down my purse, and took a seat. "You know me, always late to the party I didn't plan." Valora grinned, lifting her glass. "Then let's make it worth your time. I've got a surprise for everyone." The chatter dimmed. She stood, clearing her throat dramatically. "As you all know, Dad loved his courtroom stories. So, to honor him, we're going to have a little fun during the memorial next week. A playful mock trial. I'll be presiding, of course. It'll remind everyone of his humor." There was scattered applause, laughter. I felt my jaw tighten. She continued, "And to make it authentic, we'll need a defendant." Her eyes found mine. "Guess who volunteered?" I blinked slowly. "I didn't." Valora laughed, dismissive. "Oh, come on, you're the perfect choice. The Honorable Judge Dre on the other side of the bench for once. It's symbolic." Mom chimed in, chuckling. "That's a great idea. We'll have her plead guilty to being too serious." The room erupted with laughter again. Cousin Harold raised his glass. "Let's make sure the sentence is lenient." I kept my expression neutral. Years in court had trained me well. I waited until the noise faded. "Symbolic," I repeated quietly. "Interesting choice of word." Valora tilted her head, sensing something in my tone. "You're not offended, are you? It's just for fun. Dad would have loved it." "He also taught us never to make a mockery of justice," I said. Her smile didn't waver. "You worry too much. It's tradition now. Everyone's looking forward to it. Just show up, casual, no stress." I nodded slowly. Casual, right. Dinner continued, though my appetite didn't. I listened as they discussed catering options, floral arrangements, seating charts. The laughter around the table became a dull hum, like static in my ears. When it finally ended, Valora walked me to the door. She was glowing with satisfaction. "Thanks for coming, Soraya. I know these things aren't your scene." I slipped on my coat. "You planned that speech, didn't you?" She looked amused. "You think everything's a strategy, isn't it?" I asked, meeting her gaze. She smirked. "You always take life too seriously." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "If this isn't a joke, Valora, you'll regret it." Her laughter was soft, effortless. She turned away, checking her reflection in the mirror by the door. "Sis, we never joke about justice." I walked out without another word. The night was cool, the kind of stillness that follows a storm yet to arrive. I got into my car and sat there, staring at my hands on the steering wheel. They didn't shake. No one saw my fists that night, but they'd hear my verdict soon enough. No one saw my fists that night, but they'd hear my verdict soon enough. The next evening, the air in my condo felt heavier than usual, as if even the walls knew what was coming. I sat at the kitchen counter surrounded by legal documents I wasn't really reading. The lamplight stretched long across the pages, soft and yellow. Outside, the rain had started again, tapping against the window like an impatient clock. I'd spent years solving other people's disputes, divorces, property fights, broken contracts, but nothing prepared me for the quiet war inside my own family. Each case I ruled on taught me to look for motive. And now I could see hers. Every smile Valora gave me hid intent. Every word from Mom's mouth was an echo of her elder daughter's tone. The file in front of me wasn't even work. It was the event schedule for Dad's memorial. Valora had sent it earlier that day. I flipped through the pages slowly until I reached the mock trial section. At the bottom, in bold, someone had written, Defendant, Judge Soraya Dre. Charges, abandoning family, prioritizing career over love. I didn't laugh, I didn't cry, I just felt a quiet finality sink in. They wanted to make a spectacle out of my dedication, the one part of my life that had never failed me. I folded the paper neatly, slid it back into the folder, and opened my safe. Inside were 3 things: my father's watch, a flash drive, and a small black recorder. I took the flash drive, checked its contents, and slipped it into the inner pocket of my jacket. Then I placed the recorder on the counter beside my glass of water. The light flickered once, then steadied. My reflection in the glass looked sharper than usual, older maybe. I whispered to it, I'm done waiting. When I arrived at Valora's house later that night, the rain had stopped, leaving the pavement glistening like black glass. Her estate glowed from the hilltop, a perfect facade, polished and proud. Inside, chaos hummed under the surface. Staff moved between rooms carrying trays of decorations, ribbons, and chairs. The living room smelled like white lilies and power. Valora stood in the center of it all, directing people like a conductor who believed every note depended on her. She noticed me the moment I walked in. Soraya, her voice lifted too sweetly. You made it. We're just putting the final touches on the big day. I nodded. So I see. Come, she said, looping her arm through mine like we were close again. Let me show you the stage setup. You'll love it. The ballroom had been transformed into a mini courtroom. A mock bench draped with white fabric stood at the far end with, In Honor of Justice, printed above it. Rows of chairs faced the front. On the side, someone had built a fake witness stand out of dark wood. It's impressive, I admitted, voice even. You certainly know how to command a room. Valora smiled. Well, someone has to keep the Dre name alive in style. You know, not everything can be black robes and gavels. Her tone stung more than she realized. What am I being accused of again? I asked casually. She laughed, tossing her hair back. Don't be so sensitive. It's pretend. You know, fun. We're charging you with abandoning family and loving your job too much. Creative. Mom thought it was hilarious, she added, watching me closely. I bet she did. For a few moments, silence stretched between us. In the distance, a worker dropped something, and the sharp sound of glass breaking filled the room. Valora sighed dramatically. I swear, if people would just listen to directions. That was her. The world always failed to meet her expectations, and she always made sure someone else paid for it. Later, while everyone buzzed around finishing the setup, I found myself standing near the fireplace again. The cropped funeral photo still sat there, my elbow frozen in eternal erasure. The sight no longer hurt, it clarified. A young decorator walked by carrying a box of programs. Excuse me, I said, can I see one of those? She handed it over. The cover was embossed with gold lettering, The Honorable Legacy of Judge Raymond Dre, a celebration of justice and family. Inside, I found my name listed once, as the guest of honor. No title, no acknowledgement of my role in the foundation, just a line between flower arrangements and closing remarks. I handed it back. Thank you. When she left, I turned toward the doorway, and there she was again, Valora. She walked toward me slowly, the click of her heels measured, deliberate. You don't like it? She asked softly. It's beautiful, I said. You've thought of everything. Her smile widened. That's because I was born to lead. You just got lucky, Soraya. Her words slipped out like silk, soft, smooth, poisonous. She leaned in close, her perfume heavy, her voice low enough that only I could hear. That's why they cheer for me. They always will. I didn't move. Her breath brushed my ear, warm and deliberate. It's not personal, sis. It's just hierarchy. Some of us were made for the spotlight. I turned to face her, our eyes level. And some of us were made to hold the light steady so it doesn't blind everyone else. For a brief second, her smile faltered. I stepped back, adjusting my jacket. You might want to remember this moment, I said quietly. Why's that? Because the next time you talk about legacy, people will use your name as a warning, not a model. She blinked, clearly confused by my calm. You always did have a flair for drama. Only when necessary. Her husband called from across the room, and she walked away, tossing a "don't be late tomorrow" over her shoulder. I stayed another hour, just long enough to avoid suspicion. When I finally left, the moon was climbing over the city. My tires hissed against wet asphalt as I drove back to the condo. Inside, the air felt cleaner than it had earlier, almost relieved to have me back. I hung up my coat, slipped off my heels, and walked straight to the safe again. My hands didn't tremble this time. I unlocked it and pulled out the small recorder. Its metal casing felt cold against my palm. I pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room, steady, warm, exactly how I remembered. Justice isn't loud, he said. It's thorough. If you do it right, you won't have to raise your voice. I closed my eyes and listened to the full message, just the hum of his words surrounding me. When it ended, I placed the recorder into my purse, beside the flash drive. My reflection in the window met my gaze, bald, unflinching, resolute. Tomorrow, I wouldn't need a gavel to deliver justice. I just needed a witness. Tomorrow came faster than I expected. The morning light filtered through my window, turning the walls of my condo into pale gold. I didn't sleep the night before. Instead, I sat in my armchair with the recorder beside me, replaying my father's voice in my head until his words became my armor. Justice isn't loud, it's thorough. By the time I pulled into the courthouse parking lot, the sky had settled into that spring blue that pretends to be calm. The event banners hung across the main steps, celebrating the legacy of Judge Raymond Dray. I looked up at them once before stepping inside. The sound of heels clicking, cameras flashing, and small talk bounced off the marble walls. Valora was everywhere at once, smiling for photos, adjusting decorations, giving directions as if she were the host of a national broadcast. I could tell from her tone she was riding the high of her own production. "Everyone's here?" she said when she spotted me. "Perfect timing, sis." I nodded, my face unreadable. "Where do you want me?" "Front row, left side," she said, giving a quick squeeze to my arm like a stage cue. "You're the star today." "Star?" I nearly laughed. Stars burn before they collapse. I took my seat, aware of every eye on me. My mother sat 2 rows behind, surrounded by friends from her church group. She was laughing, again, always laughing. The trial began with Valora standing at the makeshift podium, mock gavel in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice theatrical, "we're gathered to honor our father's spirit of justice with a little fun. And what better way to do that than by putting our own Judge Soraya Dray in the hot seat?" The audience clapped, some even whistled. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile I'd mastered in 1,000 courtrooms, controlled, detached, bulletproof. 2 uniformed officers entered through the side doors, Trent Vask and Mason Greer. My pulse slowed, not quickened. I knew their faces, their arrogance, the kind of men who believed badges gave them the right to cross every line. "Come on, Judge Dray," Valora teased. "Don't make us issue a warrant." Trent stepped forward, mock handcuffs glinting under the light. "You're under arrest for crimes against family warmth." Laughter rippled through the crowd. I didn't move. "Is this really necessary?" "Tradition," Valora said, winking at the crowd. Trent grabbed my arm. His grip was too tight for a joke. Mason took the other side. For a heartbeat, the room's laughter blurred into white noise. They sat me down in a chair at the center of the room. I caught the faint scent of the lilies Valora had arranged earlier. Sickly sweet, almost suffocating. My heart stayed steady. I had no fear left for them to feed on. Valora reached into her bag and pulled out an electric trimmer. The crowd murmured, uncertain. "Relax, everyone," she said with a grin. "It's symbolic, renewal, rebirth. Like Dad would say, sometimes you've got to strip things down to find truth." The razor buzzed to life. The first swipe across my head was like lightning, cold, electric, final. I didn't flinch. Gasps filled the room, mixed with laughter that sounded less sure this time. Hair fell across my shoulders and onto the floor. Mason recorded the entire thing on his phone. Mom's voice cut through the noise. Look at her bald head. It's hilarious. The audience laughed again, relieved to follow her lead. That's when it happened. Everything slowed. The laughter became distant, like a movie playing underwater. I could see the officers grinning, Valora's perfect hair shining under the lights, my mother clapping as if this humiliation were a family joke. I inhaled once. 5 minutes, I whispered. No one noticed. When they finished, the applause trickled out. People started standing, stretching, murmuring about how bold and creative the tribute had been. Some glanced at me with uneasy smiles before looking away. Valora handed me a small mirror. See? You look powerful, sis. It's a statement. I set the mirror down gently. It's something, I said. My voice was calm, too calm. Trent leaned over Mason's shoulder. Guess even judges need humbling once in a while, he muttered. I stood up slowly. My scalp burned from the cold air. Every strand of hair on the floor felt like evidence. 5 minutes. I walked toward the exit. People whispered, some out of discomfort, others out of gossip. No one stopped me. In the hallway, I saw one of the courthouse security guards standing near the elevators. He straightened as I passed. Judge Dre? He said softly. Are you all right? I met his eyes. Give me 5 minutes. He nodded without question. I entered the side corridor that led to the main courtroom. My courtroom. The place where my authority had never been challenged, not once. The place where silence meant respect, not humiliation. Inside, the bailiff was organizing documents on the bench. When he saw me, his mouth fell open. Judge Dre? Prepare the docket, I said. Case number 22, C1085. Officer Trent Vask and Officer Mason Greer. Charges, assault under color of authority. His eyes widened, but he moved. Yes, Your Honor. Exactly 5 minutes later, the doors opened to a new room full of faces, some from the event still holding half-finished drinks, others whispering, confused about what they were witnessing. Please rise, the bailiff said, his voice echoing through the chamber. The Honorable Judge Soraya Dre presiding. The same officers were escorted in, still smirking, until they saw me. I walked in wearing my black robe, the gavel in my hand. My head was bare, shining under the courtroom lights. Every step I took clicked against the floor like a countdown. The laughter outside died immediately. Valora stood frozen in the back of the room, color draining from her face. My mother looked around, confused, clutching her purse as though it might protect her. I sat behind the bench. The wood felt solid beneath my palms, grounding me. Court is now in session, I said. My voice carried across the room, calm and precise. Trent shifted in his seat. Wait, this isn't… Quiet, I said, raising one hand. The authority in my tone silenced him instantly. Mason looked toward Valora for help, but she said nothing. She was a statue now, her own game collapsing around her. I turned to the prosecutor waiting at the side table. Are the charges prepared? Yes, Your Honor, ready to proceed. The bailiff handed me the file. My fingers brushed the paper that bore their names. Everything I'd planned led to this moment, not revenge, but restoration. I looked at the two men who had pinned me down like an object. Officer Vask, Officer Greer, I began. You are charged with unlawful restraint, assault, and violation of public decency. You will answer to this court as any citizen would. The crowd was silent except for the faint hum of the air vents. Trent's jaw tightened. You can't do this. I leaned forward. You did this, officer. I'm simply recording it. The gavel touched the block with a single clean strike. I didn't look at Valora, not yet. I didn't look at my mother either. There would be time for them later, time for their silence to become evidence. Right now, I looked only at the two men who thought humiliation made them powerful. 5 minutes ago, they had my body in their hands. Now, I had their fate in mine. Proceed, I said. Their trial was about to begin, but mine had already ended. In their hands, under their smirks. The courtroom had been quiet for nearly 30 seconds, but it felt longer. The kind of silence that didn't ask for permission. It claimed the air and held it still. I remained seated behind the bench, robe neatly buttoned, fingers resting calmly on the surface like I hadn't just been publicly humiliated in the same building only minutes earlier. The woman who sat here now wasn't a victim. She was the reckoning. People from the mock trial had begun filtering in through the side doors. First a few, then more. Their smiles were gone, replaced by discomfort, like guests who realized too late they'd attended the wrong kind of party. In the front row, Valora sat perfectly upright, her mouth tight, hands clasped. She hadn't spoken since the gavel struck. Her eyes scanned the room, but they avoided mine. That told me everything. My mother sat beside her. Isolde Marin, queen of dismissal, monarch of gaslighting. Her church pearls looked too heavy for her neck today. She kept glancing from me to the officers, confusion pooling on her face like spilled coffee. She didn't understand what was happening. I did. I leaned slightly forward and addressed the court with a voice that didn't need to be raised. We are here today to address case number 22C-185, Officer Trent Vask and Officer Mason Greer, charged with unlawful restraint, public humiliation, and conspiracy involving misuse of charitable assets. Trent squirmed in his chair. Mason blinked rapidly. Their attorney, some overpaid local loudmouth in a charcoal suit, stood. Your Honor, these are serious accusations that deserve impartial review. I raised a hand. This court has reviewed sufficient probable cause. We will proceed to evidentiary presentation. He sat down faster than expected. The bailiff walked to the far corner, where a cart with a monitor stood ready. I'd preloaded Exhibit 1 myself the night before, an unedited copy of Mason's phone video, the one he didn't realize synced to a shared cloud. Amateur arrogance. That always made my job easier. I nodded once. The video began to play. Sound on. It opened mid-laughter. Valora's voice, bright and biting, rang across the speakers. You'll be the surprise defendant. Come casual. It'll be fun. Laughter followed. Then the screen showed me, seated in the chair, expressionless. The trimmer buzzed, louder than I remembered. The blade moved over my scalp while people clapped. Some leaned forward in their seats, others squirmed. I heard someone near the back mutter, Jesus Christ. Then came my mother's voice. Clear, clean. Look at her bald head, it's hilarious. The gasp in the courtroom was louder than anything from the video. On screen, my own face didn't flinch. That detail broke people more than the act itself. Stillness speaks in ways shouting never can. Valora, on the video, smiled proudly as she held up the clippers. Then the clip ended. Silence returned, heavier now, tinged with disbelief. I heard a sniffle to my right. When I glanced, it was Marlo, Valora's daughter. She had her hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes. Her gaze was fixed on the screen like she was seeing me for the first time. The defense attorney stood again, visibly rattled. Your Honor, that video lacks context. The event was symbolic. No physical harm was intended. I cut in, calm as ever. Intent does not negate impact, nor does staging excuse cruelty. The court will now move to supporting documentation. The bailiff distributed printed emails and screenshots, evidence of Valora's directives to Trent and Mason, financial transfers from the Family Foundation's event budget to personal accounts, time-stamped messages referring to me as the perfect target. I read aloud from one. No one will stand up for her. She's made herself the outsider. I paused. Let the room absorb it. My mother's hand twitched in her lap. Another email from Valora to the event planner read, Trust me, she won't fight back. She never does. I looked up from the bench. Funny how wrong people can be. Valora finally looked at me. Her face was pale, drained of her usual camera-ready glow. I kept my eyes on her. You know, I said slowly, addressing the room but never breaking her gaze. When people say it was just a joke, what they mean is, I never expected you'd have the power to make it stop. She blinked. What you dismissed as performance, I said, standing now, became your confession. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. The walls did it for me. The gallery shifted. Whispers rolled like waves. I caught pieces. That's abuse. She set her up. She's her sister, for God's sake. Someone near the back stood to leave, visibly shaken. A man in a navy suit muttered to his wife, "We can't be seen here." The tide had turned. This wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It was a stage, and they were all witnesses now. I turned my attention back to the officers. Trent's shoulders slumped. Mason no longer smirked. Their attorney sat quietly, eyes on the floor. "The court will now recess briefly," I said. "We will reconvene for closing remarks." As the bailiff called for a break, I stepped down from the bench, not for drama, not for performance, but because I wanted them to see me up close. Valora rose, slowly, trying to regain composure. "Soraya," she started, voice low. "This isn't—" I didn't let her finish. "You volunteered for this," I said. "I didn't have to ruin you. You did that yourself." I turned before she could answer, robe sweeping behind me, hair gone, but dignity intact. The doors opened ahead, sunlight spilled through, lighting my path out of the courtroom. I didn't have to ruin them. They volunteered. The door hadn't even fully closed behind me when the bailiff leaned over and said, "Your Honor, the next witness is here." "Bring him in," I replied, keeping my voice even, though I already knew who it was. As I resumed my seat behind the bench, I heard a few gasps from the gallery. The name alone was enough. Mr. Avery Lancaster stepped into the courtroom wearing the same charcoal gray suit he'd worn at my father's funeral, not a crease out of place. His silver tie clip glinted under the lights, and the way he carried a leather folder told the room this man hadn't come to speculate, he'd come with facts. Valora's eyes widened the second she saw him. Her mouth opened, then quickly closed. Her shoulders drew back like she was bracing for impact. "Avery Lancaster," I said, "you've been subpoenaed as a material witness. Please approach." He nodded with professional calm, stepping into the witness box. His voice was steady when he took the oath. "Mr. Lancaster," I began, "can you tell the court your relationship to the Dre family?" "I've served as legal counsel for Judge Raymond Dre's estate for the past 17 years, he replied. "I handled his personal matters, including the final draft of his will and the administration of his charitable trust." "And you are in possession of that will?" "I am," he said, tapping the folder. "This is the most recent version, signed and notarized 5 months before Judge Dre's passing." I motioned to the bailiff, who brought the document to me. I flipped through the pages slowly, allowing the sound to fill the room. Page 3 contained what I expected, but what Valora clearly didn't. "Can you please read aloud the appointed trustee and executor named in that will?" He didn't hesitate. "Judge Soraya Dre." A ripple moved through the courtroom like wind rustling dry leaves. A few heads turned toward Valora. Her face froze. No flinch, no breath, just stillness. My mother blinked rapidly, clearly confused. Avery continued. "Judge Dre made it very clear that his youngest daughter was to assume full fiduciary control over the foundation, no co-trusteeship, no shared authority, sole execution rights." I kept my expression unreadable, but the muscles behind my knees unclenched. "And the version currently being used by the foundation?" I asked. "That document," he said with practiced ease, "is a fabricated draft submitted by Ms. Valora Hatch 6 months ago, allegedly as the final version. Upon my investigation, I found significant inconsistencies in formatting, signature style, and notarization." "Do you believe it to be fraudulent?" "I do." The room fell quiet. All that moved was the clock's minute hand ticking forward, marking the end of any illusion Valora thought she still held. "Do you have anything else for the court?" I asked. "Yes," Avery said, pulling out a USB drive. "A video message recorded by Judge Dre, to be played only if the will's authenticity was ever challenged." The bailiff plugged the drive into the monitor. I gave a single nod. The screen blinked to life. My father's face appeared, tired but focused. He sat in his den, surrounded by the books he loved and the silence he craved. "If you're seeing this," he said, "someone has tried to rewrite my intentions." He looked straight into the camera. "I want it known that I chose Soraya because she understands justice. She doesn't do it for attention or applause. She does it because it's right, even when it costs her. That kind of integrity shouldn't be punished with silence." I looked over at Valora. Her chin had dipped, eyes glassy. I trust her with everything I built, my father continued, because she never asked for power, only purpose, and that's why she deserves both. The screen went black. Silence again. But this time, it was charged. I straightened in my seat. The court accepts the will and accompanying video as verified legal exhibits, moving to the final piece of testimony. From the back of the courtroom, a man stood. His suit was slightly wrinkled, tie crooked. I hadn't seen him in 2 years, but his walk hadn't changed. Eli Crawford, my ex-boyfriend. The gallery turned as he approached the stand. Even Valora looked surprised. Clearly, she hadn't expected him to appear in person. I didn't flinch when he took the oath. I didn't look away when he opened the envelope he carried and handed it to the bailiff. The letter inside was short. Confession always is. "Would you like to read this, or shall I?" I asked. Eli glanced down. "You can." I took the page. My hands didn't shake. "To whom it may concern," I began, "I, Eli Crawford, acknowledge that I re-entered a personal relationship with Judge Soraya Dre under false pretenses. I was offered financial compensation by Ms. Valora Hatch to gain Judge Dre's trust and persuade her to sign a legal document transferring control of the Dre Family Foundation." Gasps. But no one interrupted. "I deeply regret my actions. I ended the arrangement before any document was signed, but my intent was deceptive from the start. I offer this statement voluntarily as part of my apology and testimony." I folded the paper once. "Even love," I said softly, "was part of their strategy." I turned to the room. But justice isn't swayed by flattery. Eli sat in silence. I gave him nothing, not anger, not forgiveness. I turned to the bench. No further witnesses. The bailiff called a recess for sentencing preparation. A substitute judge had been assigned to avoid conflict of interest, and I stepped down from the bench for the final time that day. In the gallery, people whispered as I took my seat in the front row. As a spectator now, a witness. The woman with the shaved head who had reclaimed her name, her place, and her father's will. Even from this position, the room looked to me. Not because I asked for it, because I earned it. They tried to cut my voice with my hair, but I was always louder in silence. 1 week had passed. It felt both distant and immediate, like a wound still pink at the edges but already scabbing over. The courtroom where it had all unfolded stood quieter now, its pews no longer filled with whispers, gasps, and moral reckoning. The chaos had settled into paperwork and statements, but something heavier remained in the silence: resolution. That morning, I walked into my chambers earlier than usual. The courthouse halls were hushed, the kind of hush only found in places where justice is slow, deliberate, and final. A few staff nodded as I passed. No one asked questions anymore. They didn't need to. Everything they thought they knew about the Dre family had already changed. I closed the door behind me and looked around the room. My robe hung neatly on the back of the chair. My gavel sat still on the desk. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting gentle lines across the dark wood. The sentencing had been delivered the day before. Mason and Trent both walked out of that courtroom with misdemeanor convictions, reduced charges, but enough to cost them their badges, their reputations, and any future in uniform. The department's press statement described their actions as a gross lapse in judgment. That was the polite version. Their community service would be served in silence, cleaning graffiti, assisting parole boards, volunteering in public libraries. But none of that would clean what they had done to me in front of a laughing room. And it wasn't supposed to. Valora didn't walk out so cleanly. Her company had suspended her within 24 hours of the footage release. Her clients pulled deals left and right. Her bank accounts were frozen pending civil litigation. The foundation she tried to claim had already been handed back to me through the original will. The fraud investigation was ongoing, and while I had stepped away from the bench for that portion of the process, I didn't need to preside over it. The system, this time, would work for me. And my mother. She hadn't spoken to me since. She hadn't said anything to the press either. She didn't deny the video, didn't offer an apology, just silence. Her legacy was now tied to the footage, a mother clapping while her daughter's dignity was buzzed away in front of a crowd. Public disgrace wasn't the kind of punishment I had ever wished for her. But sometimes, when the law can't make things right, shame does what courts cannot. Later that afternoon, I left the courthouse for the first time all week without looking over my shoulder. I didn't drive straight home. Instead, I turned down the old street where our family house still sat. White shutters, red brick, the same mailbox I had painted when I was 13. It was no longer ours. A sold sign was staked in the front yard. 2 moving trucks were backed into the driveway. A man carried a crib up the porch steps while a woman unpacked boxes labeled kitchen and photos. Their daughter rode her scooter in circles on the sidewalk, humming some cartoon tune. I slowed the car but didn't stop. There was nothing left for me in that house. I rolled the window down just enough to feel the breeze and whispered, "I hope they make memories worth keeping." I drove on. The next day, I returned to my chambers early again. I liked it quiet before the courthouse began humming. As I poured a cup of coffee, a soft knock interrupted the silence. "Come in," I called, expecting my clerk. But it wasn't her. It was Marlo. Valora's daughter stood in the doorway, her posture hesitant but firm. She was dressed in jeans and a hoodie, no makeup, hair pulled into a messy bun. She held something in her hand, wrapped in a sheet of paper, folded at the edges from being handled too many times. "I'm sorry to come without calling," she said quickly. I shook my head. "You're fine." She stepped inside, eyes scanning the room like it was sacred ground, and maybe to her it was. "I found this," she said, holding out the item in her hand. "I thought you should have it." I took it gently, unfolded the paper. It was the original funeral photo, uncropped, unedited. There I was, on the far left, hair long, eyes steady, standing beside Valora. Her hand rested on my shoulder in the picture, like we were still pretending back then. I studied my face in the photo. So much had changed. "I kept it," Marlo said. "Even when Mom changed the one on the mantle, I knew it wasn't right." My eyes welled before I could stop them. "I don't want to be like her," she added quietly. I didn't say thank you. I didn't need to. Instead, I reached for her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. We sat in the chairs by the window, no words needed, the kind of silence that doesn't bruise but binds. After she left, I returned to my desk. I held the photograph for a long time. Then I opened the top drawer and pulled out a small black frame. I removed the outdated law school award that had been sitting in it for years and placed the photo inside. I didn't take it home. I stood, walked to the built-in shelf behind me, and set it in the center, between the gavel my father once used during his community lectures and the certificate naming me senior judge. Not at home, at work, where my presence had never been erased. There was a knock at the door. "Judge Dre," my clerk said, poking her head in. "The press is waiting downstairs. They want a statement before the official handoff." I nodded. "I'll be there in a minute." She paused. "Are you okay?" I looked in the mirror hanging behind my door. My head, still bald, caught the morning light in a way that made it shine like glass. I didn't flinch. I didn't reach for a scarf. "They took my hair," I said, adjusting my collar. "Not my power." As I stepped into the hallway, the murmur of cameras and voices grew louder at the other end. Microphones pointed my way, lenses capturing every movement. I walked toward them, not with revenge, but with something heavier and more lasting. Truth, and now the world was listening. In the end, this story wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming voice, identity, and power when everyone else tried to take it away. Sometimes, the deepest scars aren't the ones left on our bodies, but the ones inflicted by people who were supposed to love us. And yet, the quiet strength to stand up, not with violence but with truth, can change everything. Have you ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to protect you? Let us know in the comments, and if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful true stories like this one. Your support helps bring untold voices to light.